Good evening. I'd like to call the May 7th, 2007 Board of Finance special meeting to order. This evening's meeting is a special meeting to discuss and have possible action on the 2007-2008 Town of Orange budget. First off, I'd like to thank everybody involved for all their efforts, and we're still here on May 7th because we are working diligently to try to do the best job we can for the taxpayers and get the budget and the mill rate to a palatable amount. And with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Pam to walk us through some proposed changes we have this evening.
Thank you, Kevin. As you indicated, we have continued to check and recheck all the figures that we have provided you. And as we've said right from the very beginning, this is a fluid document. There are changes that continue to occur. First, I just want to take you through the budget totals page, and under Director of Finance, you will see an adjustment, and that's as a result of your meeting last week. $6,600 was taken from that line item and moved to Community Services Elderly on the second page. Next on the budget total summary, under legal, there's a $45,000 reduction that is being recommended to you this evening. That comes from the town attorney when he reviewed the program with the first selectman, the program totals, I should clarify. He made the recommendation that legal tax appeal, he felt that he could adequately provide the services for an amount $45,000 less than was appropriated. So it went from $60,000 down to $15,000. Next, see under total public works and sanitation section, $5,000 is reduced from the town hall building budget, as well as $5,000 from community center. Those are both reflected in the heating oil line item. As you may recall, when we discussed the heating oil appropriation in aggregate earlier on in our budget workshops, there was a slight buffer in there of approximately $14,000. My recommendation at this point, in a continuing effort, as Kevin pointed out, to bring the mill rate down as low as we reasonably can, we are recommending that $10,000 be reduced. Also in that section, you will see a reduction of $27,000. We're recommending that the heat pumps at the library actually be moved to a capital item. It seems that that's a more appropriate location for that expense. And lastly, under employee benefits, there's a significant amount, and I am going to just briefly talk about one part of it, and I'm going to ask Al to talk more about the health insurance trust fund. But the first dollar amount decrease is as a result of an employee that we had expected to retire in the 07-08 year, and they are actually leaving prior to June 30th. So we are reducing the accrued sick leave by $25,000, and as you will see there, we are deducting $282,746 from the health insurance trust fund. There are some adjustments made to revenue, but I will talk about those after we finish the expenditure side. So I will let Al explain to you.
Okay, thank you.
Let me start by passing up the analysis to you guys. As you know, we are self-insured on our health insurance costs. And that fund was established in 1996 by a joint action from the Board of Ed and the town. A self-insured trust fund should carry approximately 20 to 25% reserve in its balances to be able to take care of the following three items. One of which is claims that are incurred but not yet recorded, and that's in the event that you should ever decide to go from a from a self-insured basis to a fully insured basis. You have to take care of that claims amount when that happens. So that's generally expected to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5% of claim. These numbers are right off our insurance consultant worksheet, and that's Bob Lindbergh. He's been our consultant since the day we put this fund in place. The next piece of the fund balance that is required to fund the health insurance trust fund is a stop loss corridor. We have aggregate stop losses and we have individual stop losses throughout our plan. But during the interim year, during the course of the year, should any of those claims exceed those stop-loss caps, we have to fund it until the secondary insurance company kicks in. So what we've done is we've gone to secondary insurance to ensure aggregate stop losses of more than $150,000 and individual stop losses of more than $120,000. So that's laid off to a secondary insurance company. We initially put that money up, but we recoup it at the end of the day. Now, for the hiatus of the time that I was not here, I don't exactly know what happened, but I do remember up through 2002, we had one or two occasions where we went over those numbers. One was in the Board of Education, and one was on the town side, where we went beyond that. So we funded that corridor, if you will, for a short period of time. And then at the end of the year, the secondary insurers paid back to the Health Insurance Trust Fund. But you do have to provide for that in the balance of your trust. The third piece of that is budget stabilization. And that piece can be anywhere between 5 and 10% of your aggregate claims. The reason you have a budget stabilization piece in there is to keep the spikes and the valleys from the health insurance costs from going forward and going back from year to year. So what you try to do is you try to level that cost out over the day, or at least keep the increase on an incline, a reasonable incline, rather than jagged peaks and valleys. What I'm proposing that we do today is, if you look down the line, we have a projected fund balance at the end of June 30th, 07 of this year of $1,158,135 in this fund. If I apply all the foregoing percentages, we really only have to have $1,065,000. So we're looking at about a $283,000 excess fund balance that we can reduce our premiums by in order to stabilize our budget. So we are well within the requirements of the trust fund to keep the reserve in place for what we need it to be to fund the program. And quite frankly, historically, we've done this. We've done it to a larger extent. In 1999 and 2000, we reduced our own premiums by about $500,000. And that brought the trust fund balance to a level that may have been a little less than what we would have liked it to be. But as it turned out, it worked out all right. So what I'm suggesting we do in order to keep the mill rate to a reasonable number that we can reasonably expect to live within is that we reduce our own premiums to ourselves by that amount of money, $282,746. Anybody have any questions on that? Is there anything I can help?
How did you? Yeah, I'd love to learn more about the sheet that you've provided, and it's very clear, Al. Thank you for that. How did you get the projected claims per category for 2008?
What I did is I trended that out for what we have right now, and I pushed that forward, and I have really pretty much all the data through April. I pushed that data forward for 2 months. So we are right within those trends.
Like some of them are going up 18 to 20%. Does that number sound?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
And yet the one for the town seemed about flat. Is that when we did the shift with the school?
That has to do with the shift between the board and the town. And in all good honesty, there's going to have to be another shift next year. Because if you look at the aggregate levels on that, the town is running at about 36.5% to 37% of the total claims, and the Board of Ed is running at 63.5%. The point that Kevin's trying to make, and you really need to understand this, if we continually understate the Board of Education costs, our education cost-sharing piece that we get from the state is reduced accordingly. They build that number that they give to all the towns on a basis of the EDO 01 from the state, from the Board of Education, from all the boards of education in all the towns. So they take that data that comes from, that's that big report that the Board of Ed screams about every year.
Yeah.
They take all that data from all the individual 169 towns throughout the state. They rank those towns in what they call an Anglic ranking, which is, in layman's terms, I guess, ability to pay. The town's ability to pay based on their demographics and based on their fund balance, yada, yada, yada. They then temper those two numbers to determine what the education cost-sharing piece is. If your expenditures are understated, you're going to get less ECS money. Our expenditures have been understated since 2000. Probably not due to anything other than no one making the allocation. You know, the last time I was here, we did allocation. The allocation was ballpark 50-50. It's probably 48-52. But I think what happened going forward is that process got lost in the sauce. So it never was really done. We did it this year. I looked at it again in April when I came in. We've looked at it again going forward. And where we are now is, if you go back to the early days, we had a much older population here in the town, and they had a much younger population at the board. Although they had more people, they had younger people with less health issues. And we had the older people with more health issues. That has kind of shifted a little bit now. So the preponderance of the number of people and the number of individuals being covered plays a more significant part in the actual cost than it did maybe in the earlier years.
A lot of data there. So it sounds like an opportunity for more revenue from the state if we allocate these things properly.
If
Is
we
that
do them
what
right, I don't know what the difference is.
I'm- No, it's okay, but it's up, it says upside.
Yeah, it goes up, it doesn't go down. And we should, in my view, we should be looking at the proper cost on each side of the board. The Board of Education side and the town side.
Not knowing what it is, but reading a category, I can see this interest HITF goes up by 73%.
Yes, it does. I'm
Help
sorry
me
to say.
understand.
We have two accounts that fund the Health Insurance Trust Fund. One is MBIA account, which is through the state, and that's the one that Blue Cross Blue Shield goes in and draws funds from to pay the claims. We have our own account with People's Bank that feeds that account. So we keep a preponderance of money in the HITF account, which is the Health Insurance Trust Fund account. And then periodically, we feed the MBIA account as required. I generally put $250,000, $300,000 a month, plus or minus, into that other account. The account at People's has never drawn interest. Has $1.8 million in it. That's your money.
So this is another deal of doing more with less. All good. So that's a plus in that
Oh, yeah,
column.
clear plus.
All right, so it's gone up
It's a clear plus.
$28,000, 73%, because someone proactively took a step and said, gee,
How come
it's
we're
a
not
lot of
making-
money with getting no interest. Good.
Rich?
For the budgeted premiums going forward, now, if we're reducing them now this year, does it make sense to reduce them next year from the beginning?
My-
Or why should we overfund from the start?
My thought is we probably will not have to reduce them next year.
Okay.
We probably won't have to reduce them next year.
And the reason being?
Because by then, the fund balance will be stabilized. Unless we have a great year, we could have a
Okay.
great year, and maybe we're gonna wanna look at making a conscious decision as to whether to keep additional funds in that trust fund or to utilize it to stabilize the budget, which is the purpose of 5% of the money in that fund, 5 to 10, 15%.
All right. Thanks.
Anyone else have any questions?
So just calculation then at the bottom, then, so you take 5% of that 4737, 4.7 million? Is that, and that's what gets you that number, right?
That's what gives me the two.
And then
two
you
change.
do that, do the math, and then it leads you to, you should have 1,065,000. We currently have the 1348, and the difference is what you're saying we should take
Absolutely
out
right.
of the budget.
Absolutely right.
Okay, thank you. Good analysis.
Thank you.
And looking at last year's number, we overfunded it last year.
Yeah, if you look at what happened last year, it appears that the co-pays were not deducted from the total cost of the premiums, because we had to push the fund balance last year of about $500,000. So it looks to me as, and again, not being a participant in the process at the time, if I look back at it retrospectively, what it looks to me like is that they took the gross number from the insurance actuary, from the health insurance actuary, and funded that without regard to employee co-pays.
Right, because we're
Yeah.
showing 191, 197
Yeah,
too.
right.
Okay.
Any other questions on the expenditure side?
These heat pumps at the library now, are they going to have to get in line with all the other capital projects, the 410 or 412?
Basically,
Okay.
yes. Hopefully, they'll go to the head of the line.
Okay.
Because it should offset, if I understood it correctly, the electricity, and it should be a help in the long run with our heat and electricity costs. So I'm hoping that the Board of Finance will look upon it favorably in the respect that you will get your money back, a return on that investment, so to speak.
Okay.
And that was an item in the capital planning committee's submittal, so that's why I found it strange that it ended up in the operating budget, but.
I have to be honest, that's something that I totally overlooked until, again, and that's why we always refer to this as a fluid document, because you're dealing with so many facts and figures that it's worth our while to continuously review it, and that was just something that kind of jumped out at me this time around. Next, on the revenue side,
I didn't know, do we want to take the,
How about if I just direct you then to the total on the expenditure side? That's a good point, Kevin. That would reduce your budget if you approve these adjustments to 52 million. Well, the town side, I will give you that figure first, and that's on the second page of your budget total. $18,550,854 for a total town budget of $52,628,819. And I also provided you with the spreadsheet that we have been utilizing for the phase-in. I believe it's the last page of the packet I handed out tonight. And that reflects that at this budget, with the revenue that we will project, the mill rate will decrease for the first year of the phase-in to 29.9.
Pam, just a little ahead of me here. I see the last page of the handout that you gave, and I see this change from the prior. Where is the mill rate? Oh, here, okay.
You've got it.
To support that very number, which is right there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Being patient.
is there a motion to accept any or all of these changes?
I make a motion, wow. Okay, I make a motion to accept the new expenditure side of the budget for the 07-08 year on the town side of $18,554,854 for a total of $52,628,819.
Do I have a second? Second by Jim. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. We'll go to the revenue side.
Thank you. And lastly, there were just a few items on the revenue side. I think if you may recall that at some of our earlier meetings in this calendar year, I had attempted to provide you with an idea of where the OVNA's projected revenue was at, as well as the police special duty. We took another look at it, and at the moment, the OVNA is at $353,000 for this year. We had projected on the revenue side for 07-08, $275,000, and I'm recommending we increase that by $50,000. We're not taking it to the full dollar amount that it looks like we may attain this year, but in light of that, I thought that $325,000 was a reasonable amount. Secondly, with police extra duty, special duty, it too will over
Yeah.
$70,000. I'm sorry.
Which document are we looking at?
I'm sorry, it's general fund revenue,
Oh, okay, thank you.
and I believe public health nursing is under total program revenue. I believe it's the third page, and it's number 415. And then on the last page is number 491 under facility and service charges, and that's where the police special duty is located. We had in their projection 65,000. I'm recommending that we increase that to 75,000. Again, it's projected to be well over 75 at this point in time. And lastly, the cell tower, which is also on the last page, cell tower rental income. In reviewing some of the contracts that the town has, I came across information that indicates and reflects the fact that as the years go out into these contracts, the actual rental increases. And I hadn't been aware of that when I first did the projections for cell tower income. As a result, it looks like we could very well be over 300,000. Again, I took a little bit more conservative approach and increased it by 30,000 to $280,000. So that totals $90,000 in additional revenue projection income for next year.
Pam, the cell tower one is of interest to me.
Mm-hmm.
What did you find when you looked at those contracts? In terms of, was it like, it went from 10%, how did it, what was the, it went from this percent to some other, help me with.
Okay, actually, what I was provided was a synopsis of the term of the contract. And for example, the first 10 years of one particular contract, the rental is $18,000 for the year.
Yes.
In the second 5 years, it goes up to 19,800. In the next 5 years, 21,780. And some of these go as far back to 97 and 98. And just looking back at the last few years of budgets, I'm not so certain that these increases were truly ever taken into consideration. Quite frankly, I didn't do an in-depth analysis of that. It wasn't a concern. My concern was going forward and looking at it and trying to come up with a reasonable projection.
Thank you.
No, not to, but he makes a good point. Do we bill them, or do they, I know this is before you were here, but were they billed properly?
They pay us. There's a contract with them, and they just pay us. I'm sorry. And they pay us according to the contract.
Okay, so as far as we can tell, were the right amounts paid? They were?
We
Okay,
think so,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're tightening that up at this point in time. We're looking back at that, making sure that they're paying us what they're supposed to pay us.
That would be a
exactly.
great idea.
Yeah, wonderful idea. Don't you think that kind of money? I think it'd be a great idea.
Well, we gotta think of it as our money, right?
Absolutely, there's no question about it.
So basically, those are the 3 items that I adjusted on the revenue side, and again, on that phase-in spreadsheet, it does reflect the revenue with these adjustments.
Was it special duty behind, was that the?
Significant amount of collections, but I think an important point to make with regard to our collections overall is that we have been very aggressive with them, and I'm not so sure that we've been quite as aggressive in the past. Lita Keeney has been wonderful about making certain that companies don't tend to take more than 30 days to pay town, and that was simply not the case, at least the year prior to my arrival, from what I've been told and what I have seen. So that's helped significantly.
76 to 88 is 12.
The only other question I had was, we were a little slow in terms of pool membership, remember, early on in the year? And the community center in general, are things picking up there now?
They have to some degree. I spoke to Parks and Rec, and as far as the facility rentals, the Parks and Rec director led me to believe that he feels most of their rental income begins this time of year, well, April and May. And Sue at the pool indicated that they do get a significant number of pool memberships that are continuous. Initially, I was led to believe it was certain times of year. She didn't really support that. She kind of felt that it continued, and I would say that they are definitely moving up. And you will see that. I apologize, I don't have an updated current revenue report for you, but when we have our regular board meeting, you will see that it has increased.
And tell them about your service there. Park and Rec.
Yes, that's an important point. Thank you. We, as of last Tuesday, Parks and Rec now accepts credit cards and debit cards, and I think it's going to be a wonderful service for people in the community. I think, like most of us, I very seldom have cash on me. I do everything with my ATM card. I think it's better accountability of monies, just from an auditing perspective and just overall from an accounting perspective. It's never a good idea to have that amount of cash floating around anywhere. So they seem pretty enthusiastic down there. We have it at Parks and Rec as well as Community Services. In Community Services, we weren't certain we were going to establish the program there immediately, but they were very anxious to have it, and that is being utilized. So I think it's a real advantage for both sides, both the citizens as well as town government.
Any other questions? Pam?
I have just one. So what you have done with that analysis, particularly the analysis you took the time to share with me, Al, so I was comparing what I was out of town, as you know, last Monday night when we went through it, but as you look at the revenue there, and all the categories, I guess the property tax number is the plug number, right? On the top, on this one now, this document.
based on
Based on
the
the revenue.
expenditure side, and yeah. it
Yeah,
seems-
well, I was coming after the week, everyone was thinking, I say, here you're gonna spend this amount of money, we know we got these other sources of revenue,
Yeah.
and then you calculate the mill rate in order to get the property tax revenue. That's what I meant by
It's a
plug.
simplistic approach, James, but not exactly that, simple, but that's
Okay.
pretty much the idea.
But what I see here is a difference that the town, the people who pay taxes in the town, are gonna pay $1,000 less. As a result of done over the week.
Changes we've done, right, that's correct. Because the ancillary revenue will not change. What we've done is we've lowered the mill rate with what's required. So mill rate is the plug factor, if you will.
Okay, but and that leads you
Not-
to
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Okay. And that's 21% of the increase. Not a bad week's work there, Alan.
So we're
Pam,
doing
thanks a lot.
good,
You do that every
Pam beat me up every day.
Well, next week.
Hey, next week I'm in Puerto Rico.
Is there a motion to accept these changes?
Yeah, I checked them too. It's all good. Not so moved. Or do I have to
Go ahead, got it.
I think the second, what did you say?
accept the revenue changes as outlined by Pam and Al?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, well, before we adjourn, I'd like to thank Pam, Al, Jim, everyone here again. I mean, this is the latest I've been on this board for 7 years. It's May 7th, and who knows what could happen if we had another week, but we don't. So, so, thank you very much for all your efforts, and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned at 8:05.